As promised, I want to welcome back to the program. We have Mr. Josh Waters from Political Strategies on the line with us. Josh, good morning to you.
Hey, Paul, good morning. Congrats on the new Showtime and being in Little Rock. I know I got some friends who are able to listen on 96.5 FM The Answer now. My grandma's also able to listen, so she's excited about that. So congrats on the new time and adding the new station.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, it's the response that we got after doing one broadcast yesterday where all we did was bring up the grocery tax hike that is being discussed was immense. I mean, my phone blew up with people, saying that they couldn't believe that this was a possibility. And, that's really what I think that, the benefit here is we're talking about, the Marble Palace bubble and being able to penetrate that and get to more people, as well as legislators who, and as human beings, I think we're all guilty of this. If you're inside a certain bubble and you only hear a certain perspective, and if that perspective is only what the establishment is telling you, but then you have another voice that's saying, no, actually, let me offer some criticisms. And I know people don't like the way I put my criticisms sometimes, but still, I mean, we're either, going to limit government and shrink government, or we're not. And right now we just keep spending more and growing more. And it's, people, it needs to be called out for what it is. But anyway, Josh, the reason I wanted to have you on is because you were in the tax farce meeting yesterday morning. Can you go? We've gone over the audio that we last hour. It was pretty amazing. I cannot believe what transpired. So, what was going through your mind yesterday in that meeting?
Well, the morning meeting was actually, kind of standard and normal. What we've gotten used to in these meetings. It's just a lot of information. The tax consultant, Randy Bauer, had a PowerPoint presentation, was presenting all this information. And in the morning meeting, again, what we've seen in past meetings, there is information that was not correct. And for yesterday's meeting, they're looking at individual income tax and corporate income tax. And first, on the individual income tax side, he had the tax rate and brackets that were out of date. And, that really got people's attention because this was not the first time this has happened. In almost every meeting that's taken place, there's been either old data, inaccurate data, and he's been called out not only by legislators, but other organizations that have presented and other people who have spoken. So that was kind of what happened in the morning. And then we thought it was done, Paul. We thought the meeting was over because he had gone through both of his PowerPoint presentations, had gone through the individual income tax presentation, corporate income tax. There's nothing left on the agenda, but they announced, well, we're going to break for lunch and come back at 1. So that kind of sets up for the afternoon thinking, well, I guess they're adding something or something's up. So I actually texted a legislator. I was like, well, what's going on this afternoon? They're like, it'll be short, but you'll want to be there. And so I was like, okay, we'll come back. So when we came back, there was a lot less people there that afternoon, but you could tell something was up because Randy Bauer had another a person with him with the PFM consulting group who was unable to make the morning session because of flight delays. Well, he was there. He had his stuff kind of set up to the corner there, and then Randy Bauer comes out from the back where the legislators are. And when he comes out, he immediately just gets his stuff, puts it on very hurriedly, and kind of leaves very quickly. And I was there with some others, and we saw this transpire. And Michael Wickline from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette approached him, I believe, to ask him a question, try to get a quote for the newspaper. And he very hurriedly just kind of didn't storm out, but he was ready to get out there. He said, just email me. And so something seemed off. And then at that point, that's when they started back and just kind of very quickly and shortly went into it, said that they've decided to move forward without PFM Consulting, that they're terminating their contract. So it kind of caught, I think, a lot of people by surprise, but I think it was very necessary based on the track record that's come up over the several task force meetings of incorrect information.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. My name is Paul, and, this is one of those programs. We have a ton of stuff to get to, and I'm worried we're going to run out of time to do it. But just some personal thoughts here. I was just expressing to our producer, board operator on the other side of the glass here, Joe, how this is one of those broadcasts where I'm really excited to bring you the news because we're actually going to cut through what I call carefully crafted language, and it's not just me that calls it carefully crafted language. It was actually a term coined by Governor Asa Hutchinson.
For everybody back to my remarks, because that's the key language that was carefully crafted.
Yeah, so this is the way he kind of looks at politics and everything else, and this is we're going to have an example here coming up like right now. I'm about to get into it of really our elected officials think that they can manipulate us and manipulate the news to get the headlines they want and mislead and deceive people. And that's not a popular thing to say, but that's the truth. And I'm just telling you honestly, folks, this is one of those times where I'm excited to bring you the truth, but at the same time, it's discouraging because, our elected officials, they really have so little regard for the truth sometimes, and that's disappointing to me. It's discouraging to me. The news today is that Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson yesterday during the budget hearings, the preliminary budget hearings, is calling for a $172 million increase in state spending. So that means his first year in office, he increased the size of government by $133 million. His second year, $140. His third year, $160. And now his fourth year, we're on course now to increase again $172 million more. This is extremely troubling because we once again have concrete evidence that just because you're a Republican doesn't mean you're a conservative, doesn't mean you actually believe in shrinking the size of government and giving more of its resources back to the people and the workers, the people that are out there creating jobs and going to work every day. And that's very discouraging, but back to this concept of carefully crafted language, this is how the governor's office tried to spin because he's got a primary opponent. He's trying to look like a conservative, and he'll do everything he can to try to look like a conservative from now until the May primary. Here is how his office tries to spin it. We have the headline here, Governor announces $100 million cut in proposed budget for the fiscal year. So ask yourself the question here, how is it that Governor Asa Hutchinson can make a speech and get two contradictory headlines? You get one from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette saying that he is asking and proposing for a $172 million increase in spending from last year. And then you get his own office from his own website is saying he's actually cutting $100 million. Well, it's all in the carefully crafted language. It's all in the attempt to manipulate the way you think about his leadership, about Republican establishment, big government leadership. The truth of the matter is, last year, the governor made a proposal, just like he made a proposal today. And in that proposal, it was $100 million more expensive. Okay, we actually didn't spend anything. It was just an idea, a proposal, a thought. Hey, and really, if you look at it, it's a $172 million increase. It was a $272 million increase. But he comes back now that he has a primary opponent, gives a speech yesterday and says, oh, you know what I proposed the last time? Well, I've been able to rethink, and we've been able to save money. He actually claimed that we've been able to save money, and I'm proposing a $100 million cut. Now, that sounds well and good, but the reality is we're not saving anything. We're still spending more money, $172 million, than we were. It's all in the spin. It's all in the carefully crafted language. And again, can you see how this is discouraging in a way? Because you have to take an honest look at who our elected officials, think we are. This is really and truly, it's hard not to take it as an insult, because they think that they're just being so blatantly deceiving here, trying to get the good headlines, trying to get the spin out. Instead, because they know that the people, they know you would disagree with the course of leadership. They know you, because we're a conservative state. Now, the mainstream media prints it because they think, oh, $172 million increase. Great. That must be good. Government growth equals prosperity to a lot of people who are in the media, in the mainstream media. Joe, what were you going to say? You were going to say something?
$172 million budget increase. He still believes most likely that we have a revenue problem, not a spending problem.
Yes, which is what he said when he had to cut when revenues weren't coming in the last fiscal year. This is Governor Asa Hutchinson's speech before the Joint Budget Committee yesterday. Here is his spin on growing government.
Last year, my administration presented an FY19 budget that allocated $5.7 billion in general revenue needs. The budget I present today is different from that. The budget that I present today reflects real spending cuts in a number of agencies through efficiencies without a reduction in services. It shows the slower growth in Medicaid spending. It meets the requirement of education adequacy, increases the funding for public safety, and reduces our historic reliance on surpluses to fund ongoing budget needs. Those are some of the changes that you'll see in the budget that is being presented today. The result of all of these changes is a net reduction in overall spending in FY19 as compared to the budget I presented last year. The reduction amounts to a net savings of $64 million. Now let me outline the highlights.
Stop. All right, so that's his spin. And again, from his website, Governor Hutchinson announces a $100 million cut in proposed budget for fiscal year. Governor Asa Hutchinson has cut $100 million from his proposed budget for fiscal year 2019 and projects a surplus of $64 million. Okay, that's where that $64 million figure comes from in his speech versus his own article from his own website. In reality, again, Joe, can you please show the headline from the Democrat Gazette? John Moritz headline, Arkansas governor calls for a $172 million increase in state spending. Now, if you go on the Arkansas Democrat website, you go to arkansasonline.com, and you go search their archives, okay? If you go do that, you can go find other headlines that are just like this from previous years. And I'm just spitballing here off the top of my head because I tend to remember this stuff in round numbers. A $130 million increase his first year in spending. A $140 million increase his second year. A $160 million increase his third year. And now for his fourth year, another $172 million. Now, if we had not grown spending the 4 years he's been here, or the 3 years and now we're going on the fourth, folks, can you imagine the real tax relief? The real tax relief we could be seeing of saying we're going to take that money, we're not going to spend it, and instead we're going to provide tax cuts. Okay, that's what a real fiscal conservative does, right? Now, after Governor Asa Hutchinson's speech, members of the Joint Budget Committee were then allowed to ask questions, not of the governor, but of his staff. Now, one of the people on his staff is a former state representative by the name of Duncan Baird. Duncan Baird is now the director of budget for Governor Asa Hutchinson. And so he's fielding these questions here. And there was And I'm so sad. Senator Brian King is going to be on the program at 7:30 today, so stay tuned for that. But Senator Brian King yesterday asks Duncan Baird and the governor's staff this question.
Two things the governor didn't talk about was with the crime crisis going on, there's no significant money or policy changes that's going to happen to help combat the crime thing, other than the fact that there is possibly, I understand everybody, this is just proposed and talking, this isn't actual stuff. So there's basically nothing in this that's going to help try and address the crime crisis issue that we have going on. The second thing is, a few years ago, in 2016, Governor Hutchinson said to have his highway plan, he needed Arkansas Works and all these people on Medicaid to go through. But yet now he's talking about cutting people and savings. So what's changed from him, besides election year, the last 3 years spending all-time record amounts of money, and then all of a sudden it's election year, now he's going to be going and cutting money. But what's changed from 2016 when he said, I have to have these people on Medicaid, 300-something thousand, or I'm not going to have money for highways, which he didn't have, to now he's saying he's letting these people off and he's saving money. Mr. Baird, do you have an answer?
Duncan Baird, Office of Budget, Department of Finance and Administration. On the first question, from a public safety perspective, I think in both the 2015 and 2017 session there have been policy changes, proposals that have begun and really started to over the course of that time period address some of those issues. In addition, from a budget perspective, we have allocated significant amounts of new general revenue to both the Department of Correction and the Department of Community Correction. I think you may see some of the impact of those changes in the county jail backup numbers. You remember back in 2015.
Okay, we're going to go to break here in just a second, and I'm going to let you listen to the rest of this audio because they go back and forth for a while, and you need to listen to it. But his questions are twofold. Senator King is asking about the crime problem we have, and nobody talks about it, but we do have a crime problem. We don't have the resources because we've grown government in other places for welfare programs for able-to-work adults like Medicaid expansion. We don't have the resources to house criminals. We're letting them out early. There are several examples of when that happens, they immediately commit crimes again, and some serious people have died. There's also been people severely injured, and there was a home invasion up in the Fayetteville area for a repeat offender who had skipped out on his court date. Then he was apprehended, extradited back to Arkansas. Then he got out again, and then he ended up biting somebody and trying to hold him at gunpoint and drive him to the ATM. My point is there is a crime problem. His second question has to do with Arkansas Medicaid expansion. It is a fact that the governor used to say that if we ended Medicaid expansion, that there would be a hole in our budget, and he had to have all these people on in order to pay for roads. Now he has flip-flopped, and he is saying, no, we need to reduce the rolls in order to save money. And so Brian King's question, now he eventually really never gets an answer from Duncan Baird on that, and I'm going to let you hear the rest in the back and forth and the non-answering of questions from the executive branch to the legislative branch. When we come back, you're listening to Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell. Big show today. Don't go anywhere. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
This is Mother Government. I come to the people of Arkansas with an important announcement. In disloyal circles, some are questioning the scope and size of government, and telling the people government programs should not waste the labors of the people under the guise of taking care of them. This is a thought I must correct. People of Arkansas, you should not believe everything you hear unless it comes from a government source. Let me, Mother Government, set the record straight. You know you can trust me. After all, would your own mother lie to you? You should know, the brand new, terrific program known as Arkansas Works has nothing to do with the old, bad program known as the Obamacare private option. Arkansas Works is good. People who say otherwise are bad, and are seeking to undermine my collective vision for progress. If these groups continue in their criticism, then you should question their party loyalty. Tell them to quit focusing on this single issue. And then, remind them Mother Government says the future of Arkansas depends on this single issue. In my next address, I will discuss the need to prepare your fellow citizens for the next round of revenue gathering that will be needed to continue funding my motherly goals. This message was brought to you by our partner, Aristocrats, serving Arkansas. Thank you for listening, and remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so we got exclusive audio here from the budget hearings yesterday. Governor Asa Hutchinson trying to spin this. We were talking about it again. The big news is Asa is once again proposing to grow government a $172 million increase in state spending. But here's Senator Brian King talking to the governor's budget director, Duncan Baird.
The last year.
I want to first off, in 2015, the governor's bill was about to reduce prison populations and reduce crime. That was the 2015 Jeremy Hutchinson bill. We're not. Crime's got worse. Okay, jail overcrowding. You guys are letting hundreds of prisoners out early every quarter. Most of them coming back to Pulaski County. So those things that you talked about haven't worked.
You know, that's probably a broader topic than, something that we want to discuss with the Department of Correction, Community Correction in their hearing this week. You know, from a budget perspective, I just know that we've dedicated significant amounts of new funds. We had the $30 million that we set aside back in 2015 towards the prison initiative. We've put new general revenue in the budget, both in 2017 and now again today. So, I mean, from a budget perspective, we've attempted to put new resources in places to address some of those issues.
But it hadn't worked. But the second question again is, in 2016, you went through the same thing in 2013 when we were told about Medicaid expansion, that we had to have Medicaid expansion to save money. Okay, we did not save money in traditional Medicaid. We're spending more than ever in traditional Medicaid. Okay, and this thing of, well, we didn't spend as much as we were going to. I mean, that's ridiculous. Okay, that's misleading people. You only save money by spending less than the actual amount. We're not spending less in traditional Medicaid. In 2016, when it came to the appropriation bill, you guys didn't get your way, and you had the line-out veto scheme to get around the Arkansas Constitution. But in 2016, Governor Hutchinson clearly said, I've got to have all these people on Medicaid to have the savings to be able to implement highway money. Now he's turned around and done a complete flip-flop during an election year and saying, we're saving money by taking these people off. What's the change?
You know, going back to Arkansas Works, we had the legislative task force that took a look at the expansion plus traditional Medicaid. I think, from when you look at the Arkansas Works and traditional Medicaid, I think a lot of it goes back to that. I think those are probably questions that...
No, Mr. Baird, you were here in 2013. You were joint budget chairman. You've been here. You were part of selling this thing that we got to have these people on it to save money. Now he's saying the total opposite. He's flip-flopped in the last year. It's just election year. So you haven't answered my question. What has changed?
Senator King, the governor's not here.
Well, he's the governor's budget person. He's here. You know what? Answer some questions, people. You know what? What has changed from 2016 that you had to have people on Medicaid to save money, to not have a hole in the budget, to now you're taking people off and bragging about savings?
Any answer to the question?
So I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're asking. So what are you asking exactly?
You guys used to say all the time, if we took people off Medicaid, there's going to be a hole in the budget. You're going to cause budget troubles if we take people off Medicaid expansion. Now, he's saying in videos and everything that we're saving money, spending less by taking people off. Total flip-flop.
So ultimately, that may be a discussion we want to have this afternoon with DHS. I think that we've been consistent. It's kind of two different things that you're asking.
All right, no, I'm not asking policy. You're the money people. You should know. You should have statistical analysis of how we are saving money produced, because you used to produce things that we kept people on Medicaid expansion, save money, state tax dollars. Mr. Letters was there. You're the money people. We're talking about the budget. We're talking about how this impacts the budget. I want to know what has changed, the statistical analysis that you guys looked and received that said in 1 year, taking people off Medicaid expansion was going to cause our state budget. To now, you sit here and say, it's saving us money.
So I think you're really talking about two different things. I think that those are questions that DHS could address when they come to you this afternoon.
No, you're the money people. You should know. You're people. We rely on the budget to tell the truth.
Stop. So that's Duncan Baird, who, by the way, when we missed budget projections last year, he's the director of the Office of Budget for Governor Asa Hutchinson. He actually got a substantial raise. Last year was reported, I think, probably back in this summer sometime. A lot of people got raises, and he did. It's like, wow, you missed budget projections, and yet you get this big raise. So Brian King, just doing an excellent job, Senator King here, of pointing out contradictions, and it goes back all the way back to 2015. We played this for you on Monday. I'm not going to get into it now, but our state representative Marcus Richmond in 2015 said that there are old truths and there are new truths, and that's what Senator King here is pointing out, is that among the establishment and the Republicans and Democrats who want government to continue to grow, in order to do it, they will come up with old truths and new truths. Now, it's not actually truth, but truth to these people, folks, is whatever words they can group together to get them from point A to point B, which is government is this size and then it grows to this size, and they will use that's their definition of the truth, of what words we can use. Now, that's, to me, deceitful. If it's not the truth, then what are you telling people? But it is true. It used to say, look, we got to have all these people on Medicaid expansion. We can't end this. And a lot of that had to do with the special interests. You have hospitals and insurance companies. Is it a surprise that insurance companies want the program to keep going when it's a guaranteed taxpayer-funded revenue stream to their businesses, whether people go to the doctor or not? We're paying over $500 a month for 300,000 people, to have insurance. Now, you do the math there. That's a gargantuan amount of money, and that's why you talk about corporate welfare. That's what this has been from the beginning, under the guise of trying to help people. We're going to be back in just a moment.
and
Yes.
just not a valuable service that's been provided.
It's like you said. I mean, this has happened before. And not to mention you have the articles about, how this guy was a liberal. I kind of speculated last hour, well, maybe the reason he was really bad at his job is because he doesn't know anything about conservative tax policy, and so he can't, he's not able to answer questions from a Republican majority state. I mean, that's maybe less likely, but still, if he's a lifelong Democrat, why would I want him to tell me what's good tax policy, or anyway, the whole thing is from the beginning has not been a good idea. Senator Brian King was right when they first announced that this tax force was hiring a consultant. He said this is ridiculous. Tax policy is one of the most debated things politically that you talk about. We know what the ideas are. We don't need to waste $300,000. Of course, now we fired this guy. We only are going to spend, I think, about $100,000. Josh, you know exactly how much we were going to waste on this guy to hire him and then fire him?
Yeah, so they have spent $88,000 to date, and I think that was just up until November. So there will be more billing for December and I guess part of January now, and then there's a 10-day notice that had to be given. So it'll probably be $100,000 to $115,000, maybe more when it's all said and done. So probably about a third of the original contract.
Okay.
Is what will be paid out.
So you're telling me, this is interesting because here's the perspective that I would like to explore. I'd like to explore Mr. Randy Bauer's colleague who wasn't able to make the morning meeting because you said he had flight delays. He gets there. He sets up his stuff in the corner. And then Randy Bauer comes out from back. The legislators, I guess, presumably told him, based on your description, they told him before they announced it, hey, man, we're letting you go. And so he comes out, hurriedly gathers his stuff, as you say. And what does his colleague say? It's like, man, what did you do this morning? Like, what happened at this meeting?
I don't know, Paul. I actually jokingly said to a couple other guys who were there a statement, well, maybe because whenever he left, like I said, he left in a hurry and said he'll send an email whenever reporter there was trying to talk to him. And I jokingly said, oh, that must not be in the contract. And I said that because this morning there was a specific point, yesterday morning, there was a specific point where one of the legislators asked about, looking at some of these tax credits that are given to corporations and, asking him to kind of analyze those and find the effectiveness of those. And the response.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, good morning, everybody. Wake up. All right, 870-275-9799 is the telephone number. Real quick, to review some of our headlines, our main headline is that yesterday Governor Asa Hutchinson proposed a $172 million spending increase next year for the budget. He claimed he was cutting $100 million on his website. He's claiming he's saving money in carefully crafted language manipulation. But the mainstream media even reporting the facts here is that it's actually a $172 million increase. So that means if he gets what he wants for the 4 years of his leadership, he will have increased spending $133 million his first year, $140 his second, $160 his third, and now $170 his fourth, which is the definition. And they're going to say, well, I cut your taxes by a measly $150 million. That $50 million of that is meaningless for job creators. And but if you cut, that's what his reelection postcards are going to say. But if you shrink, if you cut taxes by $150 million, that's what his postcards will say. But you grow it by you grow government by spending more. What is that now? That's a solid $500 million, right? What's happened? Has government grown or has government gotten smaller? You be the judge. The record on Asa is clear. And what is clear is the reforms that the people of Arkansas have been voting for in the Republican Party are being resisted by the leadership from implementation. All right, so we'll get more on that later. We'll be talking to Josh Waters at the top of the hour. But this segment, folks, I just want to say, I'm happy to say, is brought to you by the Patriots of Act 746. They are a great group. They are leaders in this state, and they're trying to educate. They are on a mission to educate Arkansans about your Second Amendment rights in this state and the concept of constitutional carry. Okay, and you can look them up on Facebook. It's Patriots of Act 746. Act 746 is a statute here in Arkansas that decriminalizes the possession of a firearm. Okay, and there's still people trying to fight the reality of that today who are, afraid of guns and see guns as bad people and sentient beings instead of tools, right? So, joining us now from Patriots of Act 746, welcome Mr. Tim Loggins back on the program. Tim, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Paul. Congratulations on the new time. I love that.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I appreciate your support. Hey, so real quick, Tim, I know we've done this before, but we do have new people listening all across the state. So tell us about Patriots of Act 746 and how you got involved in that great organization.
Well, as you said earlier, Paul, we're the leading grassroots organization advocating for our gun rights and educating citizens about our gun rights here in Arkansas. Currently, we have a membership on the main group of around 12,000. Recently just started some regional chapters around the state. I know the Northeast chapter that I'm involved in has, in the last 6 weeks, grown to around 538 members in 6 weeks. We're adding every day, we're educating every day, and we're telling folks, hey, this is your rights, this is the law. And we don't deal in speculation. We deal in law. We deal in facts.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. And it's great. I mean, you guys have been on the forefront here when, back, I believe, in 2013 when this all came into being, that, firearm possession had been decriminalized to such an extent to where, I've heard this said before, there's no law that says that, you are allowed to sit on your front porch and drink some iced tea. But there's no law that says that you can't do that. And that's the status right now. I mean, that's the best way I can summarize what Act 746 accomplished.
You got to go back. Act 746 amended 573-120, which is the law concerning carrying a weapon in Arkansas. And what it really did is said you have to have unlawful intent to deploy that weapon against a person in order for it to be a crime. It says you can carry a handgun, knife, or club on or about your person in your vehicle or otherwise readily available. On or about your person is pretty clear language. That means open or concealed. And unless you plan on using that weapon against the person illegally, I'm not talking about self-defense, I'm talking about illegally, then it's not a crime. And you don't need a permit to carry concealed or open. And that's the law, 573-120.
Yeah. I love that the group is so large and it's growing, every day. And like you said, it's now around 12,000 people. Those are 12,000 activists, really, who are able to, I believe, just really hold elected officials accountable when it comes to this very important issue, the right to, to defend ourselves, the right to keep and bear arms. And so it's really fascinating to watch the social media impact that you guys have, and it is an extremely powerful, and it's in a way to put kind of politicians in their place sometimes. And one of the key issues right now is we have a lot of these politicians going around tooting their own horns and slapping themselves on the back because of a bill that was passed last year called Enhanced Carry, where they created more red tape to exercise your Second Amendment rights and a new higher concealed carry permit for a nominal fee, right? And so tell us what's going on with that, Tim, and the status of that, because I know there's been a ton of backlash.
Well, you said that they're patting themselves on the back, Paul. Actually, here we are a year later after it was enacted, and they're still fighting over it. Just a couple of weeks ago, they had the Rules Committee meeting down at the legislature trying to enact the insane rules that state police came up with, 34 pages of regulations. And we had legislatures not only arguing briskly, but I mean almost fist fighting over this law that they passed a year ago because they don't even know what it says. It's a hot mess. I mean, your average citizen can understand enhanced carry and what they've done. They hear the lawmakers talk about, well, now you can carry in places you couldn't. And, you know, that may be true, but the real story is that Charlie Collins had a real simple campus carry bill, and he tried 3 sessions to get that through. And all he wanted was, you know what, college professors and college students that have a permit could carry on college campuses. That bill was yanked out of committee, out of judiciary in the Senate by the governor's nephew.
Because of the governor.
Well, and yes, directly because of the governor, and I'm not sure of his motivations. It could be because, you know, he was getting some backlash from the administrators of colleges not wanting guns on campus, or it could be simply because he's not in favor of guns. Mm-hmm. But for whatever the reason, the governor was not wanting to have to be put in a position of vetoing a bill about gun rights. Mm-hmm. So they yanked it out of committee. They started putting all these new amendments on it. They wanted originally like 16 hours of training, additional training. They wanted to really make it hard for someone to get this special permit, this enhanced permit. It went back to the Judiciary Committee. They wound up yanking it out of the House Judiciary and really didn't follow normal procedures and rushed through a law that a lot of legislators were put in a position of, how do I vote against a gun bill? And I'm a Republican. And I've got the NRA that's going to be issuing my ratings on guns. How do I vote against it? But then again, this is a trash law.
It's garbage. It's a garbage law.
It's a garbage law that really doesn't do a whole lot, and it infringes as much as it promotes gun rights. I mean, personally, I think it probably violates the Constitution on Article 2, Section 18. The General Assembly shall not grant to any citizen or class of citizens privileges or immunities which, upon the same terms, should not be equally belong to all citizens.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting court case.
Besides violating Article 2, Section 5 of the state constitution.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting court case. Okay, so moving into this next topic, over the holidays, Governor Asa Hutchinson attempted, to use his friends in the media to promote the concept that we're an open carry state. Okay. Not a constitutional carry state, although he said that, but then he defines constitutional carry is that you still need a permit to carry concealed, protecting that precious revenue from the Arkansas State Police. And, of course, there's still this big dispute with the Arkansas State Police on what Act 746 means. And so it really kind of just made it, in a way, the wild, wild west, to use their terms, because we now have the governor endorsing the concept of different pockets of interpretation of law enforcement throughout the state. But what did you make when he decided to come out, and obviously Jan Morgan, who's got an amazing rating, and with the NRA, you'd have to, obviously she does because of her activism. And you have, Asa Hutchinson coming out and saying, oh, wait, I still like your guns. I'm saying we're open carry, but he still protects the concept of needing a permit to conceal carry. What are your thoughts on that, Tim?
Well, first of all, I guess Governor Asa thinks he's Noah Webster and he gets to make the definition of terms. You look up constitutional carry and it nowhere matches what the governor says is constitutional carry. I guess he's kind of inventing his own. That's number one.
Okay, Tim, you're you're breaking up just a little bit. If you could find I don't know if you can get to a different area to try to get a little bit better signal, but go ahead with your point.
Well, I mean, the governor's kind of redefining what constitutional carry means with that letter that he gave the state police, and I guess he's confused on what constitutional carry is. To get to your point, Paul, about really the governor didn't pivot or shift. He restated his previous positions, but I think he did so in fear of the rating that Jan Morgan's going to get from the NRA. We know that she's going to have an A-plus rating. There's no doubt about it. And the governor's trying to get a little publicity, saying, hey, guys, I'm for guns as long as you don't mind my definition of constitutional carry.
Wow.
He didn't really shift. I mean, this is the same thing he's been saying since he took office.
Right. Well, okay. So I shouldn't I shouldn't classify it as a shift. I guess it's just more of it was a political tactic. It was a political push to get his name out there. And so what you're saying, Tim, it's an interesting theory here that Asa is worried about Jan Morgan's rating with the NRA and what that's going to do to him. And so he makes this statement in a way to try to salvage his NRA rating. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I would even go so far as to call it a political stunt.
There we go.
To get some headlines. He's trying to garner some headlines and try to get the, most folks don't follow politics closely every day. And they hear the headline, the governor says we're open carry, and in the back of their mind they're saying, oh, okay, Asa is for our gun rights. And they don't really pay attention to the entire article. And the truth is, he told a partial truth. Yes, we're open carry, but we're constitutional carry. There's no law that says you have to have a permit, and he's just dead wrong in half of his position in that he released to the state police. And by the way, I think his paper violates Arkansas law when he's encouraging prosecutors to treat the law differently in different areas of the state. There's a law in Arkansas that's a preemption status, and prosecutors don't have the right to interpret law. They just don't have that right, and the governor kind of tried to give them that right through executive authority that he doesn't have.
Yeah, he did when he was like, but check with your prosecutor before you open carry. I mean, come on. I mean, that is terrible leadership. None of us want a government, whether you're, a leftist or somebody who's a conservative, where you don't know what the law is. Depending on where you're going. We're a sovereign state here. What kind of leadership is that? I also think secondarily to all of this, what this also does is further serve to protect the revenue of the Arkansas State Police. Because if you read his full letter, what he's saying here is make sure you get that concealed carry license if you want to conceal, because that's and all that's doing is, ensuring people go out and purchase a permit that if they want to hang out in Arkansas, they don't need.
Let's be clear. Asa Hutchinson is not a defender of the Second Amendment. He is not keeping his oath to the Arkansas Constitution. He is spreading disinformation to the citizens of Arkansas in the name of revenue. The state police are making around $5 million off of this. And the whole thing I find funny is he's in the position of pulling political stunts because he didn't want guns on campus, because that's what originally got Jan Morgan involved in this entire process to start with. She came to testify against the horrible enhanced carry law and the tricks and shenanigans that they were doing, on the floor of the House and Senate. And that's how she got involved in the first place.
Well, yeah, okay, so going back to the Charlie Collins bill, originally it was just very simple. It was saying, hey, if you've got the permit, the existing one, and you're a professor, you can carry. Governor Hutchinson didn't want that bill. And so instead, Charlie Collins and others, they bent over and contorted themselves, and instead of trying to challenge the governor, they were more loyal to the R at the end of his name, the Republican, didn't want to put him in a bad spot to have to veto a bill and expose himself as being, not for that freedom. And so instead, they come out and they make a new enhanced licensing requirement and all of this other nonsense. And you've got concealed carry instructors now just saying that they're going to give up altogether and just quit even offering the classes because the government's making it so terrible. And I also can say this. I just got this text from our mutual friend Gary. Is it true there's a $1,000 Patriots of Act 746 offering a $1,000 reward for anyone who can point to an Arkansas statute that says you must have a concealed handgun license to carry a weapon?
Yes, sir. Gary started that probably 12 days ago. The initial reward was $200, and Gary asked if anyone on the page wanted to contribute to up the bounty, and several of us did. And right now it's sitting at $1,000. And you know what? We know it's a rhetorical question. I learned a long time ago, you don't ask your question you don't know the answer to.
Yeah, right.
And so far, we tagged the governor's office, the attorney general's office. We tagged the state police in it. We tagged the authorities that should know.
Yeah.
and they haven't responded. And oh, by the way, no other citizen has either, because there is no law that says you must have a concealed carry permit in order to carry concealed. It doesn't exist. And oh, by the way, there is no penalty in the law anywhere for carrying concealed without a permit. The law tells you what's prohibited and the punishment for doing that prohibited activity. It doesn't tell you what you can do. It tells you what you can't do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't exist. And, we have a $1,000 bounty. And no one stepped forward to claim it yet.
Yeah, I know. I love you. I love what you guys are doing. Tim Loggins with Patriots of Act 746. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much for waking up early with us and coming on and sharing your point of view. And look forward to doing it again soon sometime.
Hey, Paul, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. All right, be safe. Folks, again, it's Patriots of Act 746. Check them out on Facebook, 12,000 strong. We're going to be back in about 3 minutes. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Folks, I just want to remind everybody listening, if you missed any part of the show, you can catch it and just go back and watch it. If you go to facebook.com/Conduit News, the Facebook Live video will be there all day. You can catch up on a lot of stuff if you go there. Also, be watching conduitnews.com as well. That's going to be right now. It's a temporary page that's up, but that's going to be changing. As the weeks go on. I'm going to remind you about that. So the headline, and I'm telling you, I know we talked about this all hour, but you got to know this is huge. I opened the broadcast by saying how I'm privileged to be able to bring you the truth today, like we do every day. But this is one of the times that it's also a little discouraging for the apparent contempt that our elected officials have from us in terms of what they believe they can do to manipulate our opinions. And you can tell that Asa Hutchinson is really, really trying to combat the truth of his liberal record, because the headline from the Gazette today, I guess this was yesterday, John Moritz, Arkansas governor calls for $172 million increase in state spending. So, again, that means his first year, he increased spending $130 million. His second year, $140 million from that. His third year, $160 from that. And now his fourth year, he wants to spend $172 million more. The reason I'm discouraged is because instead of just owning that, the governor comes out with his own spin on his own website and on Facebook and everything else, and with this headline, Governor Hutchinson announces $100 million cut in proposed budget. Now, that's interesting how the Gazette and everybody else knows it's actually a spending increase, but what he is trying to do is mislead people saying it's a $100 million cut. And you say, Paul, well, how can he even claim that? Well, once again, last year he proposed a budget that was $100 million more expensive, okay, that spent $100 million more. Now he's proposing one that's $100 million less and putting that as the headline. Now, folks, that is pretty cut and dry deception as far as I'm concerned. It's the kind of stuff that people can't stand from their elected officials, and it's not the kind of government that we want. And it just shows you how vulnerable he thinks he is when it comes to a Jan Morgan primary this May. Jan Morgan is challenging Governor Asa Hutchinson. He is trying to pivot to the right. It is just a bunch of theater. It's not real. It's fake. It's a performance, okay? And I just think that, you need to know about it. Matter of fact, I don't think do we have time for this? Here's from the real quick audio from State Representative Kim Hendren yesterday during the budget hearings. He wanted to ask a question. Listen.
Put it down back there, please. And I'm going to be answering folks' questions who pay my salaries and who's elected to send me down here for a time or two.
That's a shot at Duncan
and
Bear right there.
I've got 2 or 3 questions I want to ask that stuff that I can understand, because frankly I can't explain these books to them because I don't understand them myself. But I do know what my constituents are asking me and what they're saying, because I think that's what we as legislators should be down here for.
Exactly right.
What I hear over and over is that government in Little Rock and Washington, D.C. is not a revenue problem, it's a spending problem. And I know that's true in my life, in my economy for the last almost 80 years now. It's been true for me, and I think it's true for government. So my specific questions are this. If I can get these specific answers, then I can give a simple answer that somebody out on the farm or out in the shop can understand, because I can understand it too. The revenue, total revenue, I just want the total revenue we expect in billions of dollars. Roughly within.
Now, he makes some great points. Stop it right there, Joe. I want to pick it up on the other side of the hour. We're going to interview Mr. Josh Waters, because he tries to nail down, he's like, and he exposes the fact that the budget was, 5 point something last year. Now it's increased to 5.6. And he wants to be able to go home and be able to say, yes, we are increasing spending. So State Representative Kim Hendren, who's a friend of the program, has been on the show a couple of times, actually making some very good points yesterday exposing that this isn't a $100 million cut. It's a $172 million increase.
Work, home, family. If it's important to you, it's important to us. This is 101.3 FM News Talk, KBTM Jonesboro.
Was basically, that fell beyond the scope of this contract, and they could do that, but it would take more time, and that would be a separate thing. So I jokingly said right then, well, the media, appearances or media quotes must not be part of the contract based on a state, conversations from that morning. And then not 10 minutes later, the contract was over. It was crazy.
So hang on a second. Does that mean he was saying if we got more money, we could answer those questions?
That's the way I took it, and that's what was asked was, okay, does this fall beyond the scope of the contract? And I don't know if that was the final thing that broke the camel's back, so to speak, or what, but that was something that did come up yesterday morning in a specific question. And so, saying that jokingly, and then 10 minutes later, the contract was ended. I think a lot of people were caught by surprise. There wasn't a whole lot of people back for the afternoon session yesterday because that was the only thing they did. So
wow. So they let man. It's unbelievable that this. I'm shocked that it happened. I wonder. Does this mean there's a shift now in the power structure? Because if you listen to Senator Hendren, who was a proponent of hiring a consultant, they hired this consultant. He defended it. And now, if you listen to the audio, he says, the committee or the tax farce or whatever wants to move in a different direction. And so I'm wondering if now maybe there's some questions about the quality of the leadership right now. I mean, because what I can see at this point, and I know they're going to defend this and say, no, we got our money's worth, whatever. No, you didn't. You hired a lifelong Democrat to advise what is supposedly, a very, very red state. From what I can see here, the whole tax farce has gotten off on the wrong foot and has completely wasted everybody's time so far. That's what I think.
Yeah, so that was kind of alluded to a little bit, I think, in some comments made by Senator Hendren. He said, people are always asking, when did the recommendations actually come? When are the fireworks starting? And so next meeting, the February meeting, the agenda had already been set. So they're going to be talking about kind of miscellaneous revenue streams, some fees, things like that aren't really in one nice category. They're going to talk about those. And then the next meeting is kind of, I think, when people can expect, I know they mentioned they're going to have groups from the right and the left come in. And I think that's when you'll see, more fireworks. And actually, okay, here's a idea of, cutting the inventory tax. What does that look like? What have other states done? And so I think that's probably when you're going to see actual recommendations and the discussion and debate of those recommendations from all these groups that are out there giving recommendations.
Is there any talk, any whispers from anybody about wanting to talk about getting spending under control?
Still nothing to date, Paul, unfortunately. And that was actually several meetings ago was kind of pushed back. This isn't about the spending side. This is just about the tax code. This is just about tax reform, and the spending side of that will come later. But today and the next few days, I'll be down at the Capitol again because they're going to be having budget hearings. So there will be discussions of the budget and how it might change before the fiscal session that starts February 12th. So budget hearings will be going on starting today through Thursday. But as far as the task force goes, not any spending cuts but when you think about it, Paul, in Arkansas, remember, if we just cut taxes, they're going to have to cut spending because under the RSA, the way it's set up, if we don't have the money that comes in through tax revenue, they can't spend it because we have to have a balanced budget.
Yeah.
And so if we just cut taxes, we don't even have to, they wouldn't even have to make those necessarily hard decisions. I mean, they'll have to come around the backside, but instead of going out and looking for places to cut, which seems like they maybe don't want to do, if they just slash taxes, they're not going to have the revenue. They'll be forced to cut spending across the board.
I'm glad you brought that up. We're talking with Josh Waters from Political Strategies. What Josh is talking about here is the RSA, the Revenue Stabilization Act. Okay, so this requires that you have about
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey, folks. Hour number 2 here. Thanks so much for being with us today. So we just came off an hour where we were talking about the news that Governor Asa Hutchinson proposed a budget to increase spending $172 million, while at the same time on his website he was trying to put out this phony idea that he was cutting $100 million. And it was only just $100 million from the increase from last year, the proposed budget. And so carefully crafted language strikes again, manipulation of the potential voter. It's election season. I mean, it's been just a huge news day so far, just on that alone. And I want to pick back up with exposing all of this. And we're going to get to Mr. Josh Waters here in just a minute. But this is Representative Kim Hendren. And this is what he was saying yesterday, trying to get a handle on how much spending is increasing to go back home and tell his constituents. Listen.
They're expected for the next year. How many billion? 5.6, 5.8, $6 billion? What is it? Just roughly. Now that's, I hope, just a total.
I think it's 5.69 billion.
5.6. Who said that?
I did. It's on the bottom of the page.
5.6 billion. He's one that can read. 5.6 billion of revenue expected for next fiscal year, right? What was it for last fiscal year? The one we just went out of.
Well,
you guys having trouble reading.
Stop for a second. Now, keep in mind, this is the director of budget trying to answer these questions. Go again, Joe.
It was $5.348 billion. So it went from 5.4 to 5.6, roughly?
Well, we expect to have net available revenue of 5.453 in 18, and then 5.69 in 19.
All right,
so
stop.
I can say we.
So really good job there by State Representative Kim Hendren of exposing that this isn't what the governor says on his website, a $100 million cut. This is actually a $172 million increase. Joining us now to talk, who was in the room for all of this, a Marble Palace update. We've got Mr. Josh Waters back on the program, second day in a row from Political Strategies. Josh, how are you, sir?
Hey, good morning, Paul. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. And you know, I really, this audio that we have, we went over it last hour. We just heard from Kim Hendren there. We heard from Senator Brian King, talk about just trying to get some answers out of Duncan Baird, the governor's budget director. He wasn't able to actually get a satisfactory answer. We've got Senator King coming up at the bottom of this hour. What are your thoughts generally about what happened yesterday? The governor gives his speech, then the legislators get to ask questions of the governor's staff.
Generally, Paul, I think yesterday may have backfired a little bit on the governor. I think the intention was to come out and have these headlines basically be what his press release was. And there's a few news organizations that kind of just cut and paste his news release, but there are some who actually took the handout that was given looked at the front page that was talking about, the cut from his original proposed budget. But then when you flip all the way over to the last page on the last line, you see, well, we're actually increasing spending by $172 million. And so there are several legislators that cut through the carefully crafted language and saw that number, and that even made the headline I saw from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. And so I think the intention yesterday was try to come out and look conservative on spending, and I think it was probably a mixed bag as far as the reporting went of that. And so I'm not sure it was what they anticipated or expected yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know specifically the political persuasions of John Moritz. I mean, I can guess, but I feel like a lot of people who are in the mainstream media, they might see that headline is a good thing, meaning, $172 million increase. Oh, good. That's, when the government grows, that's a good thing. There's a lot of people that subscribe to that philosophy. They really do believe prosperity comes when government grows. And so that may be why you have the headline you have.
Yeah, that could be why. I guess I didn't think about it that way. But that could be. And one other thing that came out yesterday, Paul, leading into this, there's this kind of mysterious quote that was put out about a week or so, I guess, from the governor's office that there's going to be this new conservative tool in this new budget that was being presented. And what we found out yesterday, this tool was setting aside $64 million that's going to be coming in revenue, setting that $64 million aside, $48 million of it into a restricted reserve fund that could be spent. They basically said if there's economic volatility, not a lot of details on what it may be spent on, but $48 million will be in this restricted reserve fund. Now, later in the meeting, the State Representative Charlotte Douglas was asking, well, what is this fund? What legislative oversight is there of this fund? Because in Arkansas, to appropriate or spend money, you're supposed to get 3/4 majority of both chambers based on the Constitution. And they've tried to find ways to get around that because it is a high standard to spend the people's money. And so the language that was used for this fund from the governor, he used the word legislative concurrence, and then Duncan Baird used the word coordination. And then come to find out when the specific question was answered, this fund is something that's going to be created, and the language of what type of legislative oversight will come later, I think, during the fiscal session. So that's the conservative budgeting tool, is this new restricted reserve fund, and then a portion of that $64 million is someone going to the highway department or to help with highway.
Okay, so you're saying how we spend this money, and again, the word conservative is depends on how you define conservative. The way Asa defines conservative is not the way I would define conservative. But you're saying how we are able to spend this money, we still don't know yet. So we don't know if they'll take this money and try to not go by the Constitution of Arkansas, which is actually if it takes 3/4 of both chambers to spend money, that is a limited government concept, because we want to make sure that everybody agrees, or a vast majority agree before the government acts. And I think most people can understand that is good government. But we don't know if they'll try to take this new fund and be able to, spend the money in a different way, right?
That's right. So we don't know the language of what the legislative oversight will be on this fund. The language that the governor used was, again, concurrent, and then Duncan Baird used the word coordination. So that makes me think concurrence is more of a, you concur in an opinion and in a legal opinion as an attorney. That's what I think of. And that's basically you agree with. And so kind of more like a rubber stamp rather than a whole separate approval process.
So it could just be legislative council. Right now, the legislative council, anytime the governor wants something, most of the time they just rubber stamp whatever he wants, and they call that legislative oversight.
Yeah, and so I think that's going to be probably a debated topic going into the fiscal session on, okay, this restricted reserve fund or revenue fund, what is the legislative oversight of that, and what can this money be spent on?
Very, very interesting stuff. So what was the attitude in the room when Senator Brian King was pointing out that the Hutchinson administration, speaking of not liking the 3/4 majority requirement, and you mentioned that they tried to get around that, and they did try to get around that when they funded Obamacare Medicaid expansion, or last time in 2016. What was the attitude in the room when Senator King was pointing out that, hey, you guys used to say that we had to have this program and more people on it, or the current number on it, or we're going to have a hole in the budget, versus now they're saying if we need to get rid of these people to save money. I mean, what was the attitude in the room? Because he really did a good job of pointing out what I think is a contradiction.
Yeah, I think the attitude in the room, honestly, though, Paul, was just kind of some quietness. People, not really paying much attention to that, unfortunately, because I thought that was a really good question. But that was that morning. In the afternoon session, there was even more questions about that, almost the exact same questions, Senator King. And by the afternoon, in so many words, Cindy Gillespie, I think maybe for the first time, has admitted that having less people on Arkansas work actually does save money and helps the budget. And she pointed to higher premiums as a reason that's gone up, and having less people would mean less premiums. And then she pointed to the match rate, which we know is going to be going up over time to eventually 10% that the state will be paying. And so Senator Jimmy Hickey in the afternoon actually asked basically the same question and got right down to it. He asked, if we got rid of the Obamacare Arkansas Works program, how much money would we save? And they didn't have those answers, but I'm told that they're going to get that number. And so I think for the first time, but Senator King was saying before, they said getting rid of this program would hurt the budget. And so the first time, I think we're going to see maybe what the savings will be if this program is ended.
Wow. Now, so that is a 180 in a big way here, because they have always said that we got to keep the program. And then they're still saying that, but you're saying that they finally have admitted that less people on a welfare program actually saves money. I mean, who'da thunk, right? I mean, they have been operating in such just completely detached from reality, where they say they want us to ignore federal tax dollars and state tax dollars, and they have been saying for years, basically the more people on this program, the better. I mean, they don't come out and say that, but it's only now that Arkansas has to start paying that they're now, trying to do something about this.
Yeah, I think I was speaking with the legislator after the meeting, and I think that was somewhat of a bombshell. For the first time that I know of, DHS was basically admitting what many people have been saying, that if you end the Arkansas Works program, we're going to save money. And in my opinion, we can't afford it, and other legislators have been making that case for years.
Well, so I think it's good that Senator Hickey, picked up on that question that, Senator King didn't get an answer to. And, and they actually are admitting some of this stuff. So really, really good stuff here. Josh, any other observations? We got to go to break here in just a minute. Any other observations from your, time down at the Marble Palace yesterday?
I guess two other things, just real quick, Paul. One was there was some question. This is something I've seen in my own research of government numbers. At one point, Representative Deanne Vaught, she was looking at a handout that was given out that morning, and then two handouts that were given out that afternoon by DHS. The one that morning was, I think, the governor's numbers, or dealt with his presentation. And she said, look, I'm looking at these numbers, and they're not even the same numbers within the department and from the governor's numbers. And she's like, it's going to be hard for me to vote on an appropriation. And I think she mentioned there's a $10 million difference. Where's that amount? And I think she may have gotten some answers afterwards. I know they came and staff was talking with her, but that was something that did come out that I think was confusing to some. And then the other thing, Paul, Senator Gary Stubblefield asked specifically on these these numbers of people that were taken off the program, most of the numbers that were given were the Arkansas Works program because they're on there fraudulently. And so I just wanted to share some of these numbers. There are 7,953 people taken off of Medicaid in 2017 because they're incarcerated and no longer qualified. There are 796 people who had dual coverage, meaning they are on the Obamacare Arkansas Works program, and they're getting an advanced premium federal tax credit at the federal level Obamacare program. And then 25,742 people were out of state and getting public assistance from other states. And so they were taken off the Arkansas Works program from that. There are 7,198 people on Medicare and Arkansas Works at the same time, which you cannot be on both of those programs. And then there's 16,467 people who had gotten new jobs and were no longer qualified based on their income levels. So overall, the total number given was over 84,000 people were taken off the rolls of Medicaid, with most of those numbers I just read the breakdown of the Arkansas Works program. So, Paul, what was asked then by Senator Hickey is, so we have all these people that we took off the program, 84,000 people, and yet, DHS was there, and to their credit, we're asking for less money than what they originally asked, but it's still $142 million total increase. So you have 84,000 less people, and they're still increasing the overall budget by $140-something million
on the Medicaid, on that specific line item. Wow, that is crazy. Can you imagine what it would be if they left those 80,000 people on there?
Yeah.
Gosh, that is crazy. And folks, it's a scam. I mean, this whole thing has been a scam because those 80,000 people on the program who shouldn't have been on there, you have been paying the likes of Blue Cross and Blue Shield every month for a premium around $500 per person, and people weren't even supposed to be on. I mean, it literally everything about this program since 2013 has confirmed my worldview as a conservative who wants limited government. Josh Waters, very good numbers. I try to write some of them down so I can reference them later. I appreciate you coming on the program, sir.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Keep up the good work.
All righty. Thank you. Josh Waters, a Marble Palace update there. Folks, got to go to break. Back in just a moment. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Come to Triple R Furniture and see our sofas, recliners, bedroom suites, and more. At Triple R Furniture, we'll deliver up to 50 miles away, and we're here to help you with all of your furniture needs. Triple R Furniture gives you the option to buy furniture outright or rent to own. We strive to make the financing process as easy as possible, which is why everyone is approved. At Triple R Furniture, we offer financing terms for 3 months, 6 months, and 9 months. We also offer a manager special. Come see us at the Highland Shopping Center in Highland, Arkansas for details. Customer satisfaction is our top priority at Triple R Furniture. Call us today at 870-856-8003 or find us on the web at triplrfurniture.com.
It's a PHP parody.
Hey, man, you got any of that marble rock?
Yeah, I've got the hookup.
Thanks. I need a fix real bad. I'm itching to grow some government.
How much you need?
I'm gonna need a taxpayer's dime bag.
No problem, sir. 1 taxpayer dime of marble rock. Enjoy.
Thanks, man. They don't call it Little Rock for nothing. Am I right?
Did you know your state representative or state senator may be addicted to growing government? The drug is called marble rock, and too much of it will cause marble fever. Watch for the warning signs. Does your legislator suddenly display a lack of humility when faced with basic questions? Does he or she suddenly develop hubris and pride that was not present during the campaign for office? These are signs they might be smoking the terrible drug, marble rock. The solution? Detox. Vote for detox. Vote to send them home for their own good.
Warning! Some politicians once voted out of office will not go home and stay in Little Rock to get their fix by lobbying, also known as the Burris Syndrome.
PHP parody.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
And we're back. Welcome. All right, so send me a text, 870-275-9799. Also sound off on Facebook, broadcasting live on Facebook, video, audio. It's facebook.com/Conduit News. That's facebook.com/Conduit News. Let's see. I want to shout out to Nancy watching in Hot Springs Village on Facebook Live. Nancy, I appreciate you listening to the program. She also writes, good grief, the numbers tell what a wretched mess the Medicaid program and the expansion are. Yes, Nancy, you are exactly right. The numbers of people that were just, these insurance companies just making money hand over fist for people that are living out of state. And it's like, do the taxpayers get a refund from that? And the answer is obviously no. And it's been a scam from the beginning. They tried to sell it as a conservative approach, like, oh, well, and that's the difference between Republicans who are pro-market and Republicans who are pro-business. Pro-business is what Asa Hutchinson is. It's what others are when they just want to give away money to Chinese companies or any company. And again, I want to reference you to conduitforcommerce.org and go read the tax recommendations on the front page right now, conduitforcommerce.org. If you want real tax reform in Arkansas and you want to know what that looks like, you need to go to conduitforcommerce.org and check that out. One of the key points, specifically if we're talking about Republicans who are pro-business and not pro-market, is to stop this economic development that's fake, the fake economic development of giving money to companies so that they'll move here. Instead, what we should do is eliminate the corporate income tax in the state of Arkansas altogether, treating all of these corporations equally. And it would actually be a wash. You would need to end giving out all these stupid incentives that, just incentivize companies to come here, take advantage of us. And in many cases, in the past, there hasn't been adequate clawback procedures if they don't deliver on what they promise and that sort of thing. And they're going to say, well, we're trying to fix that now. But, folks, let's just let the market do the work and get government out of the way. So instead of government picking winners and losers, if the government just adjusts its tax policy, and very similar to what Donald Trump did with the corporate tax rate. I don't know, he didn't eliminate the corporate tax rate, but when you go from 35 to 21%, and then you mess with that repatriation thing that no other industrialized country does. If you've got a company in Germany that has something overseas and makes money, Germany doesn't do anything when you bring it back across their borders. Yet we do. It just is very weird. We'll be back with Senator Brian King next. Are you tired of having to fight balanced budget, essentially. But what it also does, and it's very weird, it's like a catch-22, it also ensures that you spend every dime you take in. Because so you fund you fund things based on category A, and then that's the top priority, and then you have category B, and so people will pass all of this stuff to get funded in category B or lower if the money is available. So that means if the money comes in, it goes right back out. And so what Josh is saying here is absolutely correct. In Arkansas, because of the Revenue Stabilization Act, if we just simply limit the amount of money going to the government by tax cuts, the Revenue Stabilization Act actually helps us. But if we continue to, send the government all the money right now, the way the Revenue Stabilization Act works and the way these politicians pass these bills, it actually ensures, you have a balanced budget, but ensures that you spend everything that comes in, goes out to fund somebody's bright idea that they put lower down on the priority list. And so that's, kind of the intricacies of what's going on down there. And we really have a problem. So if you cut taxes, you directly affect the size of government here in Arkansas. And so that's why they need to cut taxes. They need to get the spending under control, reduce spending. Why not spend less one year? And then you're going to have, the proper cushion. Go ahead, Josh. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And Paul, the reason, we know that government here in Arkansas, the spending continued to go up, and we continue to spend more per capita than these large liberal states of Illinois, New York, and California. But one thing that did come up, and it's come up other places, but one thing that came up yesterday was, again, the fact that Arkansas has the highest top rate on individual income tax of our surrounding areas. Of all the states we border, and even states we border like Texas and Tennessee don't even have an individual income tax. And when we're looking at benchmark states, is what they've been calling them in the task force. So they'll look at, not only states in the region, but other similarly situated states. So they looked at Iowa, Indiana, I think North Carolina. And Iowa actually has a slightly higher rate, but, and Mr. Bauer was from Iowa, what he explained was, but actually the effective rate in Iowa is even lower than Arkansas's, because in Iowa you can deduct your federal taxes on your state tax return. And so their effective rate actually comes down below that 6.9%. And I think it was Representative Pitts pointed out on some of the data points, whether you look at the lower range and the higher range, on almost every data point that was there, I think except for one, Arkansas had the highest effective individual income tax and much higher on the income side.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back. 870-275-9799. You can call or text that. Leave us a voice message if we can't get to you. Or send us a text or sound off on Facebook, facebook.com/Conduit News. All right, welcome back to the program. We've got Senator Brian King on the phone from District 5. Brian, welcome back, sir.
Hey, good to be on, Paul.
Yes, sir. All right, a couple of things. Got two things I want to talk about. I want to talk about what happened yesterday with, the what I would call carefully crafted language trying to mislead people. But the first thing I want to talk about is how right you were back when they hired this tax consultant, and you said this is ridiculous. We have in-house resources. Then it came out that the tax consultant, who was fired 2 days ago, was a raging liberal, lifelong Democrat, contributed to Democrats. And so I just want to say you were correct initially. It was a waste of time, waste of money, and we now know that is a true statement.
Yeah, and I mean, Paul, I'm wrong a lot. I make mistakes, but down there you have experience. But first, let me say, now it's early in the morning. I'm a farmer. I get up early, and the first thing I have to, check, you would think would be the farm. And I'm a poultry cattle farmer, so you have to put up with a lot of, let's say, stuff. Unfortunately, I have to put up with political stuff. So the first thing I get up to is Jamie Barker, the spokesman for Asa Hutchinson. I hope they're listening. I tweeted with you. I hope they're tuning in, and I hope they're listening.
Mm-hmm.
So they sit there and they're trying to get in some little spat about the convention and Trump and Jan Morgan. Okay, forget about the budget and money. They're in a little fourth grade squabble or something. I'm like, I didn't even get into it. I don't even care. What I care about is, Paul, in 2016, when John Gilmore was cashing big checks off the taxpayers, Asa Hutchinson was going out there and telling people, if we take people off Medicaid, we're going to save money. We're going to have if Brian King, if we reduce people off the Obamacare expansion, it's going to hurt the budget. And now he's flip-flopped and said the same thing. So I sent John Gilmore and Jamie Barker a question on Twitter. Say, since Asa Hutchinson is saving all this money, why? I asked him, who is the all-time record biggest spending governor for the time they're in office? Who is the all-time biggest record spender? Let's see when they come up with an answer. They're on Twitter. The second thing, who is the all-time biggest spender of Medicaid? Now, Asa Hutchinson is going out there and trying to tell people he's saving money, folks, cutting costs. That's what he's saying. So I just posed those questions. Let's just see how long it takes them to answer with the answer. And I gave them a hint. I tried to help them out. They know it.
Well, I mean.
So anyway, but on the tax farce, everything. You know what I said in the paper originally was, you know what? Before you hire consultants, which sometimes needs to happen, folks. It sometimes needs you. You know what? Exhaust all resources first. I've been down there and experienced. You know what? Jim Hendren doesn't listen. He's always on Twitter, sitting there saying, "Oh, I'm so tired of these people criticizing, and don't come up with solutions." Well, first off, Jim, that's part of the job. I've never once complained about that in 12 years that people complain to me. Okay, so Jim does this. He don't want to listen. And what Jim Hendren sits there and says, I said exhaust all resources first. Use what resources before you stick it to the taxpayers. Jim Hendren doesn't do that. He's tried to stick to taxpayers for $300,000 more money. Okay? Didn't listen, doesn't want to listen, just messes up, screws up. And then in the paper, literally, he's talking his head off trying to spin his way out of it. Well, we got some good information, but they were wrong on some other stuff. What I said in Twitter last night, and I haven't heard anything from Jim, is Jim was a mechanic out there, and he was fixing your tires. What Jim is saying is, folks, you drive off the lot, and on your 4 tires, 2 of them fall off. You've paid him $100,000 to get it right. And he's saying, well, hey, you know what? 2 of the tires stayed on. So, I mean, it just, folks, it's a regular thing. If you're driving down the road and you're going to work, and 2 of your tires fall off, and Jim Hendren put on all 4 of them, he's going to sit there and tell you, well, 2 of them stayed on. So, once again, it's just how they waste money down there foolishly, and then they go and lie and spin it. Like, they did in 2016, and now they're trying to do now.
And I think all this really does is expose, that the task force way of governing is just not responsible in turn. I mean, I think
misleading to see.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Our constitutional legislative branch, the entire body should be debating and making these decisions, not having them trying to be the rudder to give people this choice architecture. And that, meaning, well, here are our choices, and all these choices are acceptable to us because we're this select group of legislators that are, debating these things, and that's what these task forces really end up doing. And I, so I think this exposes that as being flawed, considering the fact that a Republican majority state hired a lifelong Democrat to head all this stuff up.
Yeah, I mean, Obama-loving Democrat, absolutely. And maybe. And the thing about it is with Jim Hendren is he doesn't listen. Just like on the campus carry, enhanced carry, whatever debacle, Jim said, I pulled Jim back there. I said, Jim, you know what, you're going to get what you want. I said, let's just try and work and debate it in committees. Let's work it out, see what we could do. And I told him, I said, I may wind up voting for it. He refused. They refused. And then that's why you got embarrassment of guns and SEC football games. That should have never happened if you're running legislation correctly. And we're talking about gun legislation and how foolish and carelessly. But on the consultant part, again, this is all misleading to see. Folks, they've got to get in your – they have misbudgeted so badly down there and prioritize Medicaid over everything else. That's why we have a crime crisis. Two things Asa Hutchinson never said yesterday. He never addressed the crime crisis. Oh, he came up with some little bitty things. Folks, it's not even going to be close to making our streets safe again, okay? And the second thing is he didn't address highways. When you're driving to work today, guess what? Asa Hutchinson has no solution for highways. And he continues to spend more in Medicaid. Finally, a Democrat Gazette headline.
Yes.
Telling the truth. Asa Hutchinson spending more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so now that makes it his first year he increased spending $130 million, his second year $140, his third $160, and now for his fourth
election year
$170 million. And then they had the audacity to try to manipulate the voters, and his office is claiming he's cutting $100 million when
yes,
which is a complete deception. It's just he's cutting.
Lying.
Yeah, it's just a new projection. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's people don't like to use that word, but that's exactly what's going on here.
That's exactly what's going on here, and the thing about it is with Asa Hutchinson in this bunch, they don't want somebody telling the truth. They're going to try and undercut you, do every type of dirty politics. And, it's just sad what's going on. And repeatedly in 2016, I was in the newspapers. I knew the facts of the budget. And I tried to meet with Governor Hutchinson. I'd say, oh, Brian King's mean and everything. I would try to be nice. I was in the newspapers. I sent text messages to staff people. John, it's all there, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
John Gilmore, Asa Hutchinson, you little minions, if you're out there listening, it's all there. And you know what? I tried repeatedly, out of the goodness in trying to work together and say, Governor, no, the facts are we are not saving money in traditional Medicaid. We are spending far more than ever. And then yesterday, Paul, I'm going to post the video up. Duncan Baird couldn't answer the questions. He just got a $19,000 raise. He makes over, you guys going to work out there, guess what? Do you get to go into your work and sit there and can't answer questions? No, that's for somebody else. The budget director for Governor Asa Hutchinson, who was there and supported Obamacare expansion, right there with his buddy John Burris, making over probably salaries and benefits, I'm going to give a range of $120,000 to $150,000 a year on video, folks, saying, I can't answer that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A budget director, when he's with budget questions, paid somewhere between $120,000 to $150,000 of your tax dollars, could not answer the question.
And the question was simple. The Hutchinson administration used to say that reducing Medicaid rolls would put a hole in the budget. Now he says it saves us money. You never got a straight answer. Now, I'm told that in the afternoon...
Never got any answer.
Right. You never got any answer, and it didn't have the numbers as to why all of a sudden there's a big flip-flop. I'm told in the afternoon, Senator Hickey asked a similar question and got Cindy Gillespie to actually admit that reducing Medicaid rolls will save the state money, which is like, oh, wow, why are they finally admitting that?
Cindy Gillespie, that's great news, folks. Cindy Gillespie in 2016 came on and backed Governor Hutchinson up. That's news right there, folks.
And so now she's saying it will save us money, so that should open the door to say, okay, well, if we got rid of the program, how much money would we save? I mean, it's for able-to-work adults. How much of this theater that Ace is trying to act like he's...
Theater lying. Let's say he's not lying. I'm saying lying.
Well, isn't that what actors are? So how much of this theater that's going on really has to do with Jan Morgan and the primary coming up in May?
It has everything to do with saving and sitting there and trying to say everything. Let me tell you, Asa Hutchinson is a bad lawyer. He's trying to flip-flop and say, he's defending something that he did, is guilty of in the newspapers, irrefutable evidence out there. And he somehow got election year, and he's going, I got to say something different. I didn't I didn't commit those things back in 2016. He doesn't even want to have to answer it or go through it. And fortunately, I got a few minutes before they try and cut me off. But Duncan Baird just proved everything. And if Cindy Gillespie is on video of saying that, she's also on video of backing Governor Asa Hutchinson up, another big paid bureaucrat. So, they have some, they're caught.
Yeah, they're changing the narrative, trying to change. They're not really trying to change direction. They're just trying to change, the carefully crafted language and how they word it. I got a text message, somebody ask Brian, what would happen to Arkansas's budget if the federal government raised the portion of our contribution for the expanded Medicaid population?
They're already going to raise the portion in each year that we're doing. Let me tell you something, folks. I already know the answer right now. It would devastate. And you take in 2020, which Congress may change up there, folks. We had, a window of opportunity in 2015 to start reversing that. Asa Hutchinson didn't listen. He refused to meet with me. John Gilmore, if you're listening, you were cashing big checks off the taxpayers. Help Jamie, who was new. I'll say Jamie's new. Jamie seems like a nice guy, and he's in this. So, guys, answer the questions on Twitter. Let's just get the folks out there. John, you were cashing big checks with the governor at the time, okay? Duncan Baird has cashed big checks off the taxpayers since he's been down there since 2009, okay? He was joint budget chairman during this time when him and John Burris were holding hands and raising up and celebrating the fact that we were going to save all this money in traditional Medicaid.
And it's all the facts bear out. Everything that they said this program was, is the opposite. I mean, it's everything we said it was. It's a big government disaster.
But who's bet? Duncan Baird. I hope he's listening. His little best buddy is cashing big checks, too, out of all that legislation.
So,
friends of legislators are cashing big checks, folks, out of legislation they pushed.
So, I mean, we're on an unsustainable trajectory. I mean, you would agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. We are in financial trouble. It's election year, folks, so you're going to have all this stuff. You will not know till a year from now how bad things are. If the economy rebounds and has miraculous gains this next year, it might sustain it.
Yeah, the 4% growth possibly. That's something like that.
I mean, you're going to have that. We are so far behind because you have to understand, and this is some of the things I'm going to come out in more figures of showing how and where we're at. When Governor Huckabee left, he said he left almost $1 billion surplus. We spent almost $1.5 billion less than what Governor Hutchinson proposes. And Governor Hutchinson this last year had no surplus. He was sitting there, and I'm like, he's trying to brag about coming up with $64 million surplus next year, possibly?
Yeah, possibly.
On a $5.6 billion budget. Folks, if you wanted a 10% cushion going in next year of $5.6 billion, it would be $560 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Governor Hutchinson, in the real world and trying to have a cushion in the next year that folks have to scrimp and save and get by when things are costing so much more, like insurance, if you're working harder, paying more for less coverage while people are working less and getting 100% free insurance on Obamacare like Governor Hutchinson and John Gilmore love. But you're sitting there doing that, and if you want a 10% cushion, so Governor Hutchinson, by your own figures, you are $500 million off of what a real-world, normal, nice cushion would be going into the next year. Unacceptable.
Last question, and then we got to go. We're talking with Senator Brian King. I mean, our spending is out of control, and I'm going to go over these numbers again. His first year, we increased $133 million from the year before. Second year, 140. Third year, 160. Now, 172 is the projection. We really can't afford to do tax cuts, or significant ones for the people, when we're spending so much more money every year. I mean, right?
Yeah, and that's the truth about things. And folks, I'm going to tell you, I tell people all the time, you know what? I'm a farmer. I sit here and we have to go out. You know what you do? You cut expenses, do everything else, see what kind of, what the hay's in the barn type thing. We also don't know in our world today, what if something happens in North Korea? What about another terrorist attack? We have a never-know world. It's a dangerous world. You have to prepare for it. Asa Hutchinson has our state so financially ill-prepared for anything at all, and he goes out there and misleads people. And then John Gilmore sits there and says, that's conservative budgeting? I mean, applied to who? Nancy Pelosi? I mean, it is just... Hey, and listen, on the questions on Duncan Baird, I had another senator that, when Ray name us, say, oh, it was just you, Brian. Kim Hendren could not get answers out of Duncan Baird, out of $120,000 to $150,000. Joyce Elliott could not get questions out of Duncan Baird.
Yeah, I've got that
That's
audio.
how sad it is.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Senator Brian King, it's always a pleasure, sir. I appreciate
and don't forget, John Gilmore, Jamie Barker, let's answer some real questions. Let's get out of this fourth grade spat with Jan Morgan. My God, ask some questions. They're on Twitter, Paul. So, retweet it out.
All right. Okay. All right. Senator Brian King, everybody. Appreciate it. I really appreciate Senator King. He always tells it like it is. Folks, we're going to go to break. It's Conduit News Radio. Good morning to you. I'm Paul Harrell. Back in a minute.
This is ASA News, The Parrot. With breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. I'm Bob Maloney. There are reports circling around from politicians who are in the know, and the same phrase keeps being used. That phrase is new revenue generation. Let's go to our reporter on the ground from the Capitol, Haley Hogwash. Haley?
Thanks, Bob. Yes, it seems the more politicians I talk to, the more I hear the phrase new revenue generation. We're trying to figure out exactly what that means, but you can rest assured it will be good for the people of Arkansas.
Haley, it certainly sounds like something good. I like how the phrase uses the word generation. That makes me think this has got to be doing something positive for our children in the future. Haley?
Yes, Bob, some new developments. I've just been speaking to some people who are here and are not politicians, and they tell me the phrase new revenue generation is actually code for a new tax.
Oh, my. Well, if this is true, Haley, that would add to a growing list of new taxes that have barely made any headlines at all, so it's best not to discuss them here on ASA News, The Parrot.
Yes, Bob, I know it's sure to make government officials angry that their phrasing of the new revenue generation has been changed by the people and called a tax increase.
I would expect an announcement from Mother Government soon to set the record straight. What is the new tax? I mean, revenue generation, Haley?
Well, this new tax, a new revenue generation would add to a growing list. First, there was a revenue generation on movies, books, and songs that people download using the internet. And next, there was the tax increase. I'm sorry, Bob, the new revenue generation on all purchases made using the internet. And now I'm told this new revenue generation is a tax on the people's patience.
I realize the people don't like it, Haley, but specifically, what is the new tax? I mean, revenue generation.
No, Bob, I'm telling you, according to the activists here at the Capitol who have gathered and are listening to some radio broadcast, the revenue generation is literally taxing the patience of the people of Arkansas. I'm told the less patience you have with the government
better not tax our patience.
The more they will tax your patience and the more money you will owe at a later date. I'm also told the collection method on taxing your patients will be decided in a newly formed multicolored ribbon task force.
How taxing.
PHP Parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, folks, welcome back. So we had, of those of you watching at Facebook.com/Conduit News, I had this political cartoon of Asa made, I guess, last year sometime. It's just a cartoon, head of Asa's face, but underneath it's green letters Asa, but with a $sign where the S would be. And now that he's increasing the budget another $172 million, I certainly think that is going to have some relevancy moving forward. Let's go to the phones. We got David. David calling in from Faulkner County. David, welcome, sir.
Hello there, Paul. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. This is David Crow, right? The famous David Crow.
David Crow. That's right. Exactly.
How are you, sir?
Hey, man, I'm loving your show being on in the morning. This is great. And I tell you what, from the first day, it's sort of shaking up Little Rock.
Really?
And, giving them a lot more to talk about down here. So it's exciting to have you on there, and then to have Brian King and Josh Waters on there today. It's a great show.
Well, good. Well, tomorrow we got Josh Miller on, State Representative Josh Miller, and other guests. So hey, I mean, we're gonna finish out our first week in the morning hours strong. David, what are your thoughts? Where does the limited government conservative movement go from here in the next 3 months?
Boy, I tell you what, the governor is feeding the bloated government of Arkansas. What is this, $172 million more increase in budget this year? And using your stats, over the last 4 years, including the current year's forecast, $605 million increase in spending. $605. That is, folks, what that is, that's $201 a person annually. We've got to pay more dollars into the government to keep this thing running.
Mm-hmm.
They keep bloviating. This governor keeps bloviating about a $150 million cut in our taxes. You know what that comes to? 14 cents a day in my pocket. I get out of a $150 million cut, that's $50 a person, that ends up being 14 cents in my pocket every month to pay for this $201 increase in spending annually, that I have to spend more dollars of my dollars for this governor to bloat this government even more than what it is right now. And it's sad. I mean, they are so disingenuous with their numbers. I'm trying to avoid the lie word.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. Yeah, Brian King didn't. I mean, but at some point, when is it? Okay, if you're going to look, if you're increasing $172 million. But then your headline on the governor's website and other news articles, are he's cutting $100 million and that's not true. But he's just cutting $100 million from his proposed increase, and so he gets to put a headline. Most of us were raised to believe that is wrong. Most people are raised to believe that is a wrong way to interact with people.
Exactly. I mean, he literally has. They keep talking about this $150 million tax cut. They keep talking about that when, in fact, they've increased taxes over the expanse of that time significantly to cut into this $150 million they say they're cut. But they've increased spending $605 million. No matter how you cut it, if we did that in our own budget, we would go bankrupt.
Yes.
It is sad. The state of Arkansas spends more dollars per person compared to the contiguous states around us by a significant percentage. It is so sad that he continues to feed this bloated government and gets away with it with his deceptive communication. Duncan Baird failed to answer Brian King's questions because he was either one told not to do it, or the guy he's just not that smart.
Yeah, it's funny. Hey, man, yeah, he's Randy Bauer smart, potentially, the incompetence we saw. Yeah. All right, David Crow, I appreciate my friend calling in from Faulkner County, Arkansas. That's all the time that we have for today. We're going to be back here tomorrow with another 2 hours of limited government talk radio focused on the issues that affect Arkansas, everything across the state, including what happens at the Marble Palace. Thank you guys for listening. Arkansas, be safe.